Tonight, a US fugitive or a case of mistaken identity. We speak to the man facing extradition to answer a rape charge. He claims they've got the wrong man. His stateside family say he's lying.
This is a case of mistaken identity.
You say you've never been to the United States?
Never in my life.
Also making the headlines as the Ukraine war continues, we're live in Krakow, where refugees who fled to the safety of Poland say they're facing huge delays to get back to family in the UK.
You think that your own government would support you and your family members, and it just feels that they just haven't done enough.
Meanwhile, aid efforts continue here, with emergency vehicles and equipment being sent from Scotland.
And in sport, Rangers are preparing to face Red Star Belgrade for a place in the quarter-finals of the Europa League.
I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. A man arrested in Scotland, accused of being a fugitive who faked his own death, says the authorities have got the wrong person and claims it's a vicious lie. In an interview with STV News, he maintains he's Arthur Knight, a victim of mistaken identity who has never set foot in the United States.
The authorities say he is Nicholas Rossi, a suspect who fled Utah to evade a rape charge. The man who's been making international headlines has been speaking to our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
Out on bail, awaiting his next extradition hearing.
Who are you?
I am Arthur Knight, and this is my wife, Miranda Knight. And unfortunately, there are those who would claim differently.
Are you Nicholas Rossi?
No.
Are you Nicholas Alaverdian?
Absolutely not.
Are you Nicholas Brown?
Yes.
When asked why he changed his name from Nicholas to Arthur, he replied because it was associated with bad childhood experiences in Northern Ireland. Miranda, who claims she married her husband in Bristol 2 years ago, says she was there when Police Scotland arrested her husband in hospital as he recovered from COVID. Arrivals to court for bail hearings were in a wheelchair. An oxygen mask remained on throughout this interview at their Glasgow home.
I nearly died. And we are terrified. How can I be a flight risk if I can't even stand?
The electric wheelchair is not a prop. There's no faking of this illness.
This is a case of mistaken identity.
You say you've never been to the United States?
Never in my life.
They claimed in court you were identified from tattoos.
That is not true. There is no evidence whatsoever that there are tattoos, and I've shown that to news reporter after news reporter.
In this interview with a US network, he did agree to roll up one sleeve.
It was up further, right? And have you had any tattoos removed?
The man wanted in America to face a rape charge is known to have multiple tattoos.
He's done quite a masterful job of hiding himself from the law.
Prosecutors in Utah say Nicholas Rossi, also known as Alaverdian, is believed to have used at least 16 different aliases.
16 aliases? No, typos.
These are very serious charges that this man faces. They claim this man faked his own death to evade those charges. Did you fake your own death?
Sharon, we're sitting having a conversation. I've never been dead to anyone.
After so many years, I know him inside out. I know my husband does not have tendencies as a rapist.
He is going to be needing a very large team on the pitch to try to say that I am a rapist, because not only are we terrified because this is a vicious lie, but we are also incredibly disgusted by the fact that we now have to live our lives in a secretive way because my wife can't even walk down the pavement to get a pint of milk. And it continues.
Some people would say you're saying it a
you-
secretive way, but you're now speaking to various media outlets, including
Absolutely.
us. Why? What is the purpose then of this interview?
The truth needs to be known.
A section of this interview was shown to Brian Coogan, who almost adopted a teenage Nicholas Aliverdian. Both were involved in local politics in Rhode Island, with Aliverdian becoming a critic of the state's child welfare system.
I'm 100% sure that it's Nicholas Aliverdian. I will bet $50,000 cash on it, and I'll put the cash up. That is Nicholas Aliverdian. And the more that he says it's not him, and the more that he tries to play a game, the more I want to come to Scotland. I have 5 boys. He's almost like my sixth child. You know when your child's lying to you. I mean, his own stepfather came out and said that's him.
You're sure that's him?
Well, that's my son. There he is, right there. I know my son. I just know my son. That's definitely Nicky. He's older, but it's him.
It's a game of chess that Nick's playing. And at the end, he's going to be checkmate out. Guaranteed.
The case returns to court for the next stage of extradition proceedings in April and May, when the prosecution say the issue of identity will be resolved. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Well, Sharon, this is bizarre.
Well, this is a case that's fascinated people both sides of the Atlantic since news of this arrest emerged in December. And what's more unusual is that the man at the centre of this case isn't hiding away from the media. That was only a very small part of what was a very long interview, and I have to say he produced very little documentation to support his claims.
And why is he here?
Well, prosecutors claim Nicholas Aliverdian faked his death, as you heard, in 2020. He fled the United States to evade justice, and they're not saying exactly how they managed to track him down to Glasgow. Arthur Knight, the man we spoke to, claims he was brought up in care in Ireland, moved to London, then to Bristol, where he married his wife, and he says he came to Glasgow a month before he fell ill with COVID because of his wife's job.
Fascinating stories. Sharon, thank you.
Now, as people continue to flee in their masses from Ukraine, the UK government has announced that refugees with passports and family members in Britain will be able to apply for visas online from Tuesday. It comes after criticism over the speed of the UK's response to the crisis.
Meanwhile, calls continue for the UK to relax its entry rules and allow more people into the country following the Russian war. Some of the busiest centres are in Poland, which has seen the largest number of refugees arrive. Well, Louise Hosey is in Krakow tonight. And Louise, further difficulties for people once they've crossed the border there?
Yes, that's right. Many of the refugees that we've seen coming over the border into Poland here have arrived and they're exhausted. They've had a long and at times a perilous journey. And of course, once they get here, that's not the end of it all. They then have to decide if they're going to go on to another country. Now, while the European Union currently allows visa-free travel, of course, that's not the case in Britain. And that's led to many of the refugees having difficulties, first of all, over whether they're eligible, and if they are, just trying to get those applications processed. Well, I've been speaking to one man here in Krakow today about his struggle to get visas for his wife and her daughters so that they can come to live with him in Scotland. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Scott knew he had to get his wife and her daughters out of the country. Lisa, Anya and Ira are now safely in Poland. He's joined them to help them get visas, but it's proving very difficult. Their visit to a UK pop-up centre left them feeling like they were getting nowhere.
It's effectively like a holding pen, and there must have been, I'd say, upwards of 300, 400 people in a canteen. And there was just didn't seem to be an organisation. The staff spent 45 minutes just asking people to move back from the door, and then from that we were 4 hours waiting without any information. And those 4 hours they processed 7 people, and they were shutting the doors for everybody to leave.
Lisa was planning on moving to Scotland to live with Scott in Wishaw later this year. After Vladimir Putin's troops invaded, Scott anxiously waited for news as she and her daughters endured a tense and chaotic 40-hour train journey to the border.
The staff on the railway had advised all the refugees to switch off their phones so they couldn't be geolocated for shelling and bombing runs. So it was, there's just no words. I was numb. So until they got to Poland, it was just a an absolutely terrible time.
When you got to Poland, how was it to finally see Scott?
Это как-то большое облегчение, конечно. Слава Богу! Наконец-то!
Basically, thank God for seeing him. It was the best feeling. It was, dreamlike.
Although the family are happy to be reunited, the hotel bills are adding up, and they're still waiting to hear when they'll get their visas.
This is coming on 3 weeks and a couple of days now. This has been going on, and we were told that it would be an expedited process. It would be done quickly, and we were mentioned. I think 48 hours was mentioned at the first port of call. So for 48 hours to come to nearly a month, you'd think that your own government would support you and your family members, and it just feels that they just haven't done enough.
For now, it's a waiting game, with the family hoping to settle and start their new lives in Scotland very soon. Well, the UK government is telling us today that they've granted almost 1,000 visas, but that's obviously far from the 200,000 people that Boris Johnson had previously suggested could be allowed to join family members in the UK. Well, we were at that visa centre at Rzeszów today, the one mentioned by Scott in my report, and whilst it was quieter, among the people that I was speaking to, there was still definitely a feeling of uncertainty and some anger.
I've had no sleep for over 20 hours because of this. Was tired, was going to collect them from the border and came over. It was early morning, and in the morning you come and you're like, come on, is there anything happening?
I don't know, no information. I have no any information.
Future family member and her mum in the trying to get the visas to go to Britain. They escaped from Kharkiv. We could be doing a lot more. And the thing is, it's just making a difficult situation far more difficult.
Well, the Home Office says that it is committed to helping Ukrainians, and that's why today they've announced that option of applying online. Having seen firsthand the number of people continuing to cross the border, what sort of effect that might have really remains to be seen. Well, we'll have more on this and a special report looking at those fleeing the war on Scotland Tonight at 8:30.
Louise in Krakow, thank you.
OK, live now to Westminster for more on the easing of those visa requirements. And Catherine Sampson is there for us just now. Catherine, these changes won't be happening straight away, will they?
Yeah, it's important to remember these changes come in from Tuesday next week, and that was a source of some frustration from the Home Secretary's opponents, some of whom accused her of being dragged kicking and screaming basically into making this announcement and this change. Why has the change come now? Well, Priti Patel says she's been consulting with Security Service, but be under no illusions, there has also been immense pressure on the Home Office over how they have handled all this. We have a situation now from Tuesday where Ukrainians, if they have family members here, if they have passports, it has to be passports, ID cards won't suffice, can apply online. They can be emailed a pass, so they won't have to visit those visa centres, and they can do the more detailed checks when they get into the country, and that is going to be a big relief for many. But of course there are still calls for the Home Secretary to go much further to match what the EU is doing, waiving visas. It's still the case in the UK. There are two routes to come here, the family visa route or a sponsorship route. The details of that remain rather vague. We've been promised more information from Michael Gove on that in the coming days.
All right, Catherine, thank you. They can't hide in shelters or stay at home when there's a curfew. The war in Ukraine means the work of the emergency services there is more important and more dangerous than ever.
And that has been recognised by their colleagues here in Scotland, who are about to take to them desperately needed vehicles and equipment. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
Final checks ahead of a 1,500-mile convoy. Gary and his team are taking a fleet of fire engines and donating them to the emergency effort in Ukraine.
We know from speaking to our colleagues in the Ukraine Fire Service that firefighters and fire engines are being targeted. So there is a great need for equipment and vehicles because what they had, which was limited, is lessening as a result of the war.
They're also filling up a truckload of vital protective equipment. The uniforms are a gift from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service.
Oh, there's quite a bit of space up there.
Now they'll be worn by fire crews faced with the fallout from the front line. The team here have been supporting firefighters in Ukraine for several years. The war hasn't ended that need, it has intensified it. These are the horrors they will face. More shelling in the city of Mariupol today. That after the attack on a children's hospital there, unimaginably callous even by the standards of this war. It's the impact on civilians that's inspired a Glasgow Caledonian student to buy an ambulance. Filled with medical equipment, he's going to drive it out to Ukraine.
This is just my best way to help. So a lot of people are helping in their own way, and I think this is the best way I can help.
Ambulances and fire engines are specialist items. The rest of us are now being urged just to donate money. More than 10 million has been raised in Scotland so far. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
Well, Ukraine is dominating all politics right now, and that was the case at First Minister's Questions too. Our political editor Colin Mackay is at the Scottish Parliament. And Colin, some breaking news tonight.
A big U-turn from the Scottish Conservative leader tonight, John. Douglas Ross has withdrawn his letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. He's withdrawn that from the Conservatives' 1922 committee. He says that all attention should be focused on dealing with the war in Ukraine right now. Now, he was one of the first. He was probably the most senior Conservative to put that letter of no confidence in following the Partygate allegations. And now, because of that, the Prime Minister will actually appear in person at the Scottish Conservative Conference in Aberdeen next weekend. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, says all of this is a humiliating climb down for Mr Ross. But at First Minister's Questions today, he was more focused on energy security. He was calling on the Scottish Government to support maximising all oil and gas extraction and output from the North Sea just now to try and reduce reliance on Russian productions.
Scotland could deal a blow to Vladimir Putin by increasing domestic oil and gas production. We could increase that production now. We could end the need to import foreign oil and gas and export more to reduce international reliance on Russian energy.
If we were to give the go-ahead to Campbell, for example, right now, 2026 would be at the earliest it could start producing oil. With new nuclear, if we were to give the go-ahead today, it would be years, if not decades, before that would come on stream.
And another row today, Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack branding Nicola Sturgeon's calls yesterday to NATO leaders not to completely rule out the possibility of a no-fly zone over Ukraine as irresponsible and naive. Now, amid the atrocities, amid the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, this is relatively small-scale politics. But on a big scale, we're 2 weeks into a war, and there is no sign of an end to that anywhere in sight.
Colin at the Scottish Parliament, thank you.
Other news now, and the number of patients being treated in hospital for COVID is at the highest level for over a year. 1,636 people are currently in hospital, the most since January 2021. 41 deaths have been registered in the past 24 hours, more than double yesterday.
To the sport now, it's a big night for Rangers in Europe. Rahman is at Ibrox.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Good evening from Ibrox, where Rangers are tonight preparing to face Red Star Belgrade for a place in the quarter-finals of the Europa League. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's side secured their place in the last 16 of the competition after eliminating tournament favourites Borussia Dortmund. They have home advantage tonight before the return leg in Serbia next week. Let's hear from the Rangers dressing room.
We're happy with we overcame Dortmund. We know with the opponent we're facing now, it's going to be tough again. You know, they were the group winners in their group. But we start all over again. We want to be in the next round. We are working hard and preparing well, as we did in the last previous game.
If we perform the same way we did against Dortmund, we have a real chance. Obviously, we know we're coming up against a strong opponent, a good team, but we're a good team as well, and we're just going to go out there and try, give our best, and hopefully come away with a good result to take to Belgrade.
Well, what do we know about Red Star Belgrade? Well, they're currently second in the Serbian Super League. They joined the last 16 of the Europa League. That's after topping their group. They are managed by Serbian icon Dejan Stankovic. Two key players in their team are midfielders Mirko Ivanic and Alexander Kataj. One man who has kept a close eye on both sides is former Rangers defender and Serbian Goran Petric.
Watch 2 games against Borussia Dortmund, and obviously watch last 2 games Red Star. And if I say 50-50 chance, both teams have something to make during the game, and be interested game, and I think so it's 50-50.
Well, in terms of team news from the Rangers camp, Aaron Ramsey isn't fit enough to start yet, so he'll be on the bench. Philip Helander isn't registered in Rangers Europa League squad, so we expect Liam Balogun to partner Connor Goldson at the heart of the defence. Kick-off here at Ibrox is at 8 o'clock. OK, let's give you some other football news now. And Ange Postecoglou says the door will always be open for Scott Brown at Celtic. That's after the former Parkhead skipper quit Aberdeen to focus on his coaching career. Earlier this week, Brown left the Dons just 9 months into his 2-year player-coach contract. The 36-year-old has been linked with a coaching position at Celtic.
I don't think anyone should be any doubt that there will always be an open door here for Scott Brown. The guy's one of the legends of this football club, will go down as one of its greatest ever. In terms of what he wants to do with his future, I think he's best placed to answer that. He's obviously made a decision right now, and then after that it's kind of up to him to sort of chart his course.
Now, after securing his first win as Motherwell manager, Stephen Robinson says his side have a chance of securing a top 6 spot. That's after the last gasp victory over Dundee last night. Conor Ronan won the match for the Buddies after heading in Jay Henderson's cross. With 3 games to go before the split, St Mirren are in 9th spot. But wait for this, they are just 1 point behind 4th place Hibs. OK, let's switch from football to rugby news now. And Scotland head coach Gregor Townsend says he wants his players to finish their Six Nations campaign with a flourish. The Scotland squad flew out to Rome earlier. That's for the match against Italy on Saturday, and they head there after back-to-back defeats against Wales and France, which ended their chances in the tournament. And Townsend believes the last 2 games are about more than just performances.
Sometimes winning covers over some cracks, and sometimes losing isn't as bad as what is made out. So performances are important. We feel if we get our performance right, then we're a match for any team in the world. And we know going away again with full crowds is going to be a test of who we are, and that's what we aim to show this weekend.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Sean has the weather.
Today's outlook is becoming more and more unsettled. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Now, the weather's going to stay rather changeable over the next couple of days. Areas of low pressure coming in from the Atlantic normally would just roll their way eastwards, clear away. However, they're getting jammed up against that big area of high pressure over Scandinavia, which means they've got nowhere to go. They just squeeze down over the top of us, and we get a squeeze in the isobaths. So there will be some windy weather at times. Now, between now and the end of Sunday, this is the sort of rainfall we're looking at. Now, I want you to think of rain clouds as being a little bit like a sponge. They're coming in from the south, which means when they meet the hills, squeeze most of the rain out, and then then we get a bit of a rain shadow. Central parts of the country only getting about 5 millimetres of rain between now and Sunday, whilst parts of Ayrshire, Dumfries and Galloway, South Lanarkshire and the higher ground of the South Highlands seeing as much as around 20 to 25 millimetres. So a lot more rain in higher areas in the next few days. Now, overnight tonight, at least we've got clearing skies for many of us. So a chilly start to the night, but turning a wee bit milder later on as cloud, further outbreaks of rain starts to move in. And that means tomorrow morning a rather damp start to the day, but probably late morning, early afternoon, it turns a wee bit drier and brighter for a time, and then the weather goes downhill in the afternoon, turning windy around coastal areas, cloud moving in and outbreaks of rain. But that rain tended to be a wee bit more showery, central areas, but more persistent across parts of Ayrshire, Lanarkshire and also the Highlands. A showery day to come on Saturday and the potential for some rather strong winds on Sunday. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, a schoolboy from Ayrshire who dedicates his time to raising awareness for diabetes has turned his attention to sending vital supplies to those like him in Ukraine.
Well, with medicine in the country dwindling, 13-year-old Lachlan Murdoch took matters into his own hands in helping refugees get what they need. Greg Ockram reports.
Going above and beyond. 13-year-old Lachlan knows just how hard managing diabetes can be.
Diabetes isn't easy. It's not easy for me either. But for certain things, I play football and that distracts me from diabetes. But they've got war, so they can't really be distracted. They're kind of focused all the time.
Probably the most essential thing that we've got insulin.
Along with his mum, Lachlan has led an appeal for surplus medical supplies, which is now en route to refugees in Poland.
So all this came about because of Lachlan, as usual. Lachlan was watching the news last Sunday and he thought we need to do something to help these people.
With a charity in his name and plenty of football connections, donations were made at 15 drop-off points across the country.
We have all of these supplies at hand. We can get it at the drop of a hat. If we run out of something, we just go to the chemist and we can get it. You know, insulin is a life-saving medicine and they don't have any at the moment. So people are dying because they don't have insulin.
This generous gift to Ukrainians in desperate need will be Lachlan's legacy. Greg Ockram, STV News.
Oh, just amazing. And to think he's only 13.
Remarkable. Well, that's all from us tonight. Scotland Tonight is back at its new Thursday time of 8:30.
And we're back again tomorrow at 6. Join us then.
Good night.